Okay, hello everyone. My name is Wade Carlsen. I am a systems engineer for Runecast Solutions, and welcome. This is I believe, one of the last sessions of the conference. So I'm hoping everybody has had the opportunity to join some of the outstanding presentations that my colleagues and others have had, our special guests that we've had that were so gracious in joining our conference and presenting some material and how, giving us examples and clues and different things about how to ensure uptime in our IT environments. We had some of my colleagues I know that were focused on new features of Runecast, securing your environments, your VMware environments using Runecast, and the excellent security frameworks and the thorough analysis that Runecast does in your environment. So I'm hoping that you guys were able to catch some of those things, all related to uptime, keeping your systems healthy. The last piece of this that we want to cover in the conference today related to uptime in your environment is your hardware stack. It's one of those things that generally sysadmins get busy, on day-to-day basis and different things. And sometimes we don't always stay on top of. So our hardware and our drivers and firmware and BIOS levels and those types of things aren't updated as frequently as they maybe should be, and so on and so forth. So with all that being said, it's, really the point of this is, Runecast Solutions has a way to scan your VMware environment. We have built in our analytics to look at your configurations, your hardware stack, and compare that against VMware's HCL. So, the point and the theme of this presentation is, how is your VMware hardware stack really doing? A lot of times we think we know, but we don't really know, because it would take exhaustive effort to go out and validate and verify every little small component and configuration in the environment. So with that being said, again, with Runecast Solutions, you can help and ensure your uptime by keeping your hardware up to date and current. Essentially, what are we talking about here? So, you might ask, Wade, why is this so important? Well, it is important because if you've been managing VMware environments long enough, or IT environments in general, I think you've always, in support and different types of things, you've always ran into that, what I call a needle in a haystack scenario, right? Where you've got an underlying problem, you're spending hours, if not days, trying to resolve it, fix it. You're exhausting your energy and resources and trying to identify the underlying problem, because if we look at an IT environment, we have the complete overall framework of the IT environment, from the server hardware all the way up to the application layer, the networking layer, storage, and all these things, and all the operating systems in between. And you can have something that's causing a disruption in the environment somewhere that's very difficult to pinpoint and find. So what can we do about this? How do we resolve this and get a grip on our environment and know exactly where we stand and what we need to update in our environment? Well, Runecast Analyzer has that, as I alluded to earlier. It has that capability. And within seconds or minutes, you click an Analyze Now button and you end up with all the results pulled from your hardware stack in your environment that gives you all of the data related to your server, the platform it's running, the CPU and the CPU series, et cetera, all the way down to the IO devices and the cards installed, the BIOS and firmware levels that they're running, et cetera. So, I'll get to that. I'm going to give you guys a few slides. Obviously, I'm in the slides. I'm going to give you a few slides and then jump into the product. And, I'm only going to talk about it for a few minutes and jump into the product and show you exactly what this looks like. But after an analysis with Runecast, what kind of data do I get? Well, again, within minutes, you're getting all the results within your hardware stack. And I'm talking your ESXi host servers, as well as we support vSAN, et cetera. So if you have vSAN, Pure Storage, those types of storage containers and so forth that you have configured in your environment, they'll automatically be be detected, and we do analysis on those as well. So, but it's going to show as well not only the intercompatibilities amongst those components like firmware and driver levels and so forth, but it's going to show you where you're compatible versus not compatible with the current version of ESXi that you're running. Okay. We also have a built-in simulator. I didn't put it in the slide because I like it to be a little bit of a surprise, but we also have a simulator where you can simulate your hardware stack as if it was running a newer version of VMware. Okay. So that's the beautiful part. One of my favorite parts of our product, especially when it comes to HCL. Again, I already touched on it. With the HCL, we are looking at and supporting from the VMware's HCL perspective, your vSphere stack, your vSAN, your Pure Storage. So that's really all about uptime, keeping everything healthy, keeping everything up to date, having a report, keeping track where you are at, because as we know, if we don't have an automated way to do this, we're doing it manually. We're logging into each server, documenting each driver version, firmware version, BIOS level, all those types of things, and et cetera, et cetera. So our inventory tracking, if you will, is what it all boils down to in my mind, is cumbersome and very time intensive, et cetera. So there's a couple of other benefits that I like to illustrate as well. So we're talking about your hardware details. Inventory view, that's the inventory part. You can use Runecast to provide all this data for you, have it at your fingertips, provide it to whoever it asks for it within your organization, whether it's your asset management team, your lifecycle management team, et cetera. You have this, again, at your fingertips. Just, click and kick out a report. So it's going to show all this stuff, but ultimately it's also going to give you your report card. How are you stacking up against VMware's HCL? Okay, what components, driver versions, different things within your hardware stack are not compatible or not on the HCL at the moment from VMware? So all these things can be underlying gotchas in the environment, so to speak, and create that needle in a haystack scenario that I talked about earlier that can be very difficult to find in your troubleshooting efforts. We also have an HCL override. I'll talk about that when we hop into the product, but we built that in as well for certain purpose. Cost avoidance, there's a couple other benefits. I starting to allude to it in lifecycle management and so on and so forth. But there's other benefits that can be gleaned that's not necessarily directly related to uptime, but with all this data and these reports and your health check, essentially, and your report card from your environment, Runecast can also be used from this data to process basically, cost avoidance. What do I mean by that? Well, because you have all this data at your fingertips, and anytime you want to perform a new scan, new data, refresh data, you can manage your hardware life cycle using the reporting function and those types of things from Runecast solutions. So the cost avoidance piece of this is, sometimes people will start having problems with the server. You even have maybe a card that's, faulting in your server, having issues with it per se. And they just say, you know what, the server's old anyway. Let's just replace the server. Let's buy a new one. But you haven't reached the complete life cycle of that server yet. And if you had full analysis, you'd realize you just need to replace the card and not the whole server. So that's kind of where cost avoidance comes into play. And Runecast can help with that. And ultimately, it's kind of with all this data and information. Obviously, I already talked about life cycle, but every piece of hardware has a life cycle, right? Generally, hardware reaches its age, if you're stretching it, about 4 years. Okay, so after 4 years, it's old, it's deprecated. You need to replace things and get rid of it and retire it. So with that being said, that's difficult. No matter if you're a small environment and a very large environment, you have thousands of servers or 4 servers, you have to keep track of that and just, I guess, intelligently know when is the time to pull the plug and spend the money and replace your hardware. Well, Runecast can help with all these things that I just mentioned. The reporting functionality and basically all the data that we give you can be utilized in all these many different ways. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the product itself, and I'll show you what all of this looks like from within the Runecast web client. So now I switch over to my web client and highlight the hardware compatibility section within my Runecast Analyzer. As you can see, analysis has already been performed and I have my results. So what am I looking at here? Well, this is my lab environment where I have a mixed mode environment on purpose for illustrative purposes only. I'm running ESXi 6.0, 6.5, 6.7 in this environment. And analysis has already been performed, and I have my results, like I said. The green check boxes means everything on the server and the cards installed are good. The red exclamation indicates that there's an issue. Underlying configuration of the environment that's not compatible with the current version of ESXi that I'm running. I have options to filter just on the host with the issues. If I turn that on, then I can hone in and focus in on only those problem areas. And if I open one up, I can easily see here what on this server is not compatible with ESXi that I'm running. This happens to be my 6.5 cluster. I can tell by the naming convention. If I scroll down, I'm going to get all this data, and this is what I talked about earlier about the reporting and all of the data at your fingertips in a quick and easy fashion. I have the type of server, I have the model of the server, CPU series, the speed at which those CPUs are clocked at. I have how many sockets, ESXi release I'm currently running. And my problem area that I have on the server is the BIOS level that is installed on the server is currently not supported or compatible with ESX 6.5. So, with the nature of Runecast, we not only, throughout our entire product, we not only show you where there's a problem, we illustrate and show you remediation steps to fix that problem. So, highlighted issue, Dell 2.8, not compatible with 6.5. But below, we provide you a list of all of these supported BIOSes, so you could take your pick and whatever fits for your environment, upgrade to that BIOS version. If I select I/O devices, so we're not only showing you what might be a problem within the server itself, but also the cards that are installed in the server. So in here, I have gigabit network connections, I have SymBIOS logic controllers, Q logic controllers, etc. Everything looks great except for my LSI SymBIOS logic controller. If I open that up, we're going to illustrate again. We're going to illustrate exactly what the problem is. Runecast Analytics does not only a driver version and a firmware version and their compatibilities, but the intelligence built into the analytics is the compatibility between them. So the combination of driver and firmware and the compatibility of those working together. If one of them is off, we're going to highlight and illustrate it, or if they're both off, you get the point. So in here, obviously I have a firmware version that's not compatible and a driver combination. So again, highlighting the issue, showing you where there's a problem, and then ultimately down below showing you which driver and firmware combinations that you need to upgrade to be compatible with the version of ESXi that you're running. If I highlight my DNEB environment, I like to show this because we do have vSAN connected to this cluster. So whether you're running vSAN or Pure Storage, they will both each be automatically detected, and we'll show you results against those and show you if you have any compatibility issues. If I select my vSAN, again, we're back here to a smart array controller. If I open that up, I can see what's wrong with that controller and the incompatibilities. We're back again to driver firmware, combinations thereof, give you a list of supported versions. So that's really, overall at a high level. Like I say, mixed mode environment. This is really nice because having different versions running in the environment on different generations of servers and different types of things is very cumbersome to keep track of manually. That's the beauty of Runecast. Click a button. Within minutes, you have results and data at your fingertips. Your reporting function, you can provide this data and information to anybody that wishes to have it in your organization. I alluded to it earlier, but again, we built in a simulator. So what does a simulator do? It simulates your hardware stack as if it was running a newer version of VMware. So I have, again, my mixed mode environment, and I can either simulate one cluster, multiple clusters. I don't check any boxes, so I'm going to simulate all of them and upgrading each of them from 6, 6.5, 6.7 to the latest and greatest, which is 7 update 1. If I highlight 7 update 1 and then click the button simulate, I will get my immediate results. Before, I had a bunch of green in here, and you could immediately see how we do cache information and have the 7.0 HCL built into our net definition database. So the results are really fast. This is a lab environment, but within seconds or minutes, you're going to have results based on a simulation of your environment as well, because things are cached. We already have all the information we need. So with that being said, upgrade planning can be very exhaustive work. It can be tremendous amount of planning itself in preparation for those. Here, click of a button, I know what I need to go do to highlight and illustrate in my servers the remediation steps I need to take prior to an upgrade. Again, we're going to give you server, the I/O devices, what's happening with them. These are the same examples that I was highlighting earlier, as they were not only incompatible with the 6.5 version I'm running, but they're also incompatible with 7. To highlight BIOS levels, in here I have some I/O devices back to Symbios logic controller, etc. What I like about this as well is, I alluded to it earlier, cost avoidance. So I may have a server. Let me pull that one up. In this case, the server itself is not compatible. You can find out if there's a hardware component within it, the CPU series, the actual model, etc., that's not compatible with 7, then it tells you you need to replace the server. Otherwise, if I'm looking at the server findings in Runecast, I only have a BIOS level that's not compatible with 7. So from a server perspective, and that box itself, all I need to do is go out there and upgrade the BIOS to the correct version prior to my upgrade. I don't have to replace the server. If I still have some life, I want to eke some more life out of the server, then I don't have to replace it, and I can just upgrade it and update the BIOS. Similar to I/O devices, okay? Overall, some of these cards may not be compatible. Again, if you look at the details, it will show if the device itself is not compatible. In these cases, in these examples, it's driver firmware combinations. So again, back to the planning stage, trying to get that last little bit of life left in your server. In this case, before an upgrade, I would just update the firmware and drivers, and then once I did that, run another scan, validate I'm true in the simulation, then I can upgrade this particular server from 6.5 to 7. If I want to go a little further, obviously there's a stretch. And with my vSAN, different types of things, HBAs may need to be replaced prior to, or again, just driver firmware updated on them prior to. So it just gives you a feel. So that really is what I wanted to cover in this, in showing you how easily Runecast can provide and implement this work for you, to where you don't have to do it yourself and manually, like I say, review the HCL, cross-check every component within your server and your hardware stack, that every little piece and component's compatible. The BIOS levels are compatible, the firmware, the drivers, everything's compatible, as well as the server platform to the new version of ESXi. Again, very quick, very easy if you have Runecast Analyzer. So I just wanted to highlight and illustrate that. And that's really what I wanted to complete with this demo presentation. Let me switch back real quick to my slides and go into, give me one moment. I always like to finish with this slide, and it's just illustrating. We do have a free 14-day limited trial out on our website. Please, if you're interested, get a look at what your environment health looks like today from a KB through the HCL perspective. Download a free trial, do a scan of your environment, and get a feel and understanding what Runecast can do for you in your specific environment. So again, the 14-day limited trial is out there at runecast.com. Or if you want a personalized demo and we can go through the entire product with you, happy to do so. We do it all the time. You could email us at roi@runecast.com for a deep dive. So with that being said, again, I hope you guys enjoy the Uptime Conference. Thank you for joining my session on the hardware compatibility and analysis of your hardware stack, which ultimately you pare it all down will lead to better uptime in your environment, prevent outages in the future. So thank you very much. Everybody enjoy your day. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.